Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Today here on the program, we, of course, on YouTube at Stillman and Co. Like and subscribe. And again, tell your friends that if you want, again, the truth on what we all saw yesterday, the truth on the Titans, if you all want the truth, you need to like and subscribe to this program. Now, I do, as we let people file in here on the program, I do want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We'll start off the top with that here on a Titans Monday. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been taking care of my home for years. They can do the exact same for you. That's right. They've been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. Of happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. I know this because I use Hiller at my home. Care is their core value. Again, I know all about this because I use Hiller at my home. They believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. As the distinguished gentleman says, hit the like button, tell a friend, and subscribe. Okay, let's get to Titans Monday. Yesterday, San Francisco, and talk about a backdoor cover by Kyle Shanahan that absolutely killed us all, that had the Titans plus 12.5 yesterday, lose by 13, 37-24. And I'm going to say this about the game yesterday. Again, I'd like to think that I'm a pretty honest person. The Titans put up some kind of fight yesterday at San Francisco. I never felt like they were going to win the game, but they also didn't get completely and totally blown out. Yes, it was boring. Yes, they suck. Yes, we knew they were going to lose, but it wasn't like they were getting beaten 41-10. And in the third quarter, we were all just sitting there staring at the TV saying, why are we watching this? It's not like we all went out of our way to go find something better to do. They put up a fight. They didn't get completely and totally blown out. That said, there wasn't really a lot of meat on the bone as far as the actual game itself was concerned. But Cam Ward, in my opinion yesterday, had the quintessential Cam Ward performance. Chase on the YouTube chat says, can Jared refrain from bashing Cam today? And here's what I'm going to say about Cam Ward's performance and why it was the quintessential Cam Ward performance of 2025. Because on one hand, he wasn't particularly good. But on the other hand, he wasn't particularly bad either. And the reason it was quintessential Cam Ward was because if you want to point out the bad things, it's very easy to do. He was inaccurate short, like when he missed Tony Pollard coming out of the backfield on the first play of the game. Again, I don't know how you can be so inaccurate on a throw to a running back out of the backfield, but Cam does that about once a week. He was inaccurate when it came to some of the medium throws. And of course, we know the deep shot he missed to Van Jefferson and the deep shot in which he hit Van Jefferson, and neither of those seemed to be very accurate passes. The one he hit Van Jefferson on was a ball that was so poorly underthrown that I actually thought Van Jefferson broke something when he came down, having to jump back into the defensive back's arms to be able to grab the ball, and then he hits the ground. Also, Cam Ward consistently could not put the ball where it was supposed to go, including throwing two passes right into the hands of San Francisco defensive backs who didn't catch it. So it's easy to point out the bad with what Cam Ward did yesterday. But on the other hand, you also can point to the good. Cam did have the touchdown throw to Gunnar Helm, where he stood in there, set his feet, and drove the football down the field. He had the touchdown pass to Jeffrey Simmons, of all people, where he kind of faked the entire defense to the right, and then on the scramble drill, Simmons moves to the left, and Cam put the ball right there on his body for a touchdown. He had the Mahomes-like scramble, where he was running all around in the backfield, and he immediately throws a beauty to Chimere DK, hits him square in the hands, and DK dropped the ball. So Cam did do some good things. Like, he actually did some good things. Did some bad things, but he did some good things. Statistically speaking, you could make the argument that Cam was good. Career high quarterback rating of 101.2. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 0 interceptions. That's not bad. But also statistically, I can point out the fact that QBR, the ESPN created stat, which judges quarterbacks based on what they play independent of everything else, 0 to 100, which assesses the quarterback's actual contribution to his team, was 37.9. Ugh. Cam threw for 170 yards, half of which came in the fourth quarter when the game was pretty much out of reach. Cam averaged 5.9 yards per attempt. That's bad. The number you want to hit is 7. Again, his QBR was 38. Brock Purdy, by comparison, was 86. That's that difference. And I think what I realized today, when I was thinking about, what are we going to talk about in relation to the game, against San Francisco and what happened, and we're going to talk Cam Ward, and everybody wants to talk Cam Ward, and I've realized, and I can even see this in the YouTube chat comments, and I've seen this now over the course of the season. There's nothing Cam Ward can do the rest of the year, short of being something he has not been so far, which would be incredible. A 300-yard passer, accurate down the field, touchdowns galore. There is nothing he can do outside of be unstoppable for the last 3 games of the season that will change anybody's opinion. If you think that no young quarterback could show any signs of success or consistency on this team, and that Cam is a victim of the organization's poor circumstances, you're going to continue to believe that it's all everybody else's fault and that it has nothing to do with a reflection of what Cam is or what Cam will be. And you're going to continue to believe that through the rest of the season, throughout the entire offseason, and into next season. And if you're like me, and you never wanted to draft Cam because you didn't think Cam was good enough, and you have 0 faith in Brinker and Borgonzi to get the Titans coaching situation figured out and to build a roster that can aid Cam, then there's nothing Cam Ward can do the rest of the season, again, besides play like a god, which he hasn't done this year, to prove that he was worthy of the first pick and that he's going to be a franchise quarterback. Again, if you believe Cam's the man and the organization's holding him back, you're going to believe that Cam is the man and the organization is holding him back no matter what happens the last 3 games of the year. And if you're like me and you didn't want to pick Cam and you wanted that Giants trade and you want to look forward to the fact that if they had made that trade, they'd have picks number 1 and 3 in next year's draft right now and their second rounder, if you want to do that, there's nothing Cam's going to be able to do short of turning into Josh Allen over the last 3 games of the year that's going to change anybody's opinion. At this point, it just is what it is. And so I've accepted it. And I have accepted what is ahead because I'm not going to enjoy this. But I have accepted what's going to happen over the next 10 months. We're going to have an entire offseason of Cam defending, an entire offseason of the Cam boys wanting you to forget about the bad things Cam did this year and the bad things that Cam does, and wanting to convince you that Matt Nagy is going to unlock Cam Ward, or that Joe Brady is going to do with Cam what he's doing for Josh Allen, or they'll hire some defensive coach, like a Robert Saleh, and they'll make Andrew Jonico the offensive coordinator, and you will tell me that Andrew Jonico is going to unleash Cam because he's the quarterback's coach in Seattle, and we've seen what Clint Kubiak's done up there, and he is going to bring that secret sauce to Cam Ward as his offensive coordinator, and he's going to be a franchise quarterback. Again, whatever. Again, I remember the Brian Callahan is going to turn Will Levis into Joe Burrow. I remember that. I know you remember that too. So, how to sum up yesterday's game for a team that had nothing to play for? I mean, they had nothing to play for. They have nothing to play for really since the third game this year. For all the people out there that said this season, they knew the team wasn't going to be good. They just wanted to see Cam develop. They wanted to see Cam play well. Well, if Cam plays well and the team doesn't play well, I'll be okay with it. You're not going to get that this season. Cam's going to have a QBR that's in the low 30s, which will probably be worst in the NFL amongst qualified passers. It is what it is. And if you're somebody who wants to see Cam totally bomb out, so that the Titans can move on sooner rather than later, and the quicker they move on, the quicker they can get to actually competing for something that matters, well, you're not getting that either. So we have 10 more months to go before anyone on either side, and let's not kid ourselves, Cam Ward is very polarizing. Because I think a lot of Titan fans were sold a bill of goods when you drafted the quarterback with the number 1 overall pick and you told everybody that he was Mahomes and you said this was going to work out. I think there were a lot of people that thought, okay, well, let's see what the kid's got. And every week, Cam goes out there and does like he did yesterday, throwing the ball right into the hands of the San Francisco DBs. I mean, his passing grade yesterday, according to Pro Football Focus, and I feel like we've gotten to the point now where, look, passing grades are what they are. PFF grades are what they are. But I think we've gotten to the point now where like Cam Ward's grade was 59.1. That stinks. Brock Purdy was 91. He was 59.1. And yet, for Cam, that's really not that bad, right? Because that's actually better than Cam's season average. So if you are somebody who thinks that Cam is never going to be any good, well, just prepare yourself for the fact that there's going to be 3 more games this year where the Titans don't really put up much of a fight, although I think there's a chance they may win against Kansas City because that would just fuck everything up as far as the draft is concerned. So at Kansas City, they've got nothing to play for. Mahomes is hurt. I mean, I think there's a chance they may win. But there's going to be 3 more meaningless games. And then an entire offseason where everybody tells us that Cam is good and that it was just, hey, you'll see year 2, he'll get it figured out. Matt Nagy is his coach. He'll get it figured out. You will see. And it's going to be very tiring. Is it tiring? Tiring. It's going to be very tiring to have to deal with that. But it is what it is. So that's the first thing. Again, on the Cam front, if you want me to just bash Cam and expect me to tell you that Cam sucks, like I told you, I think Cam sucks. And I think Cam, who does have talent, I think if Cam was ever going to be successful, then I think that they would have had to approach this entire situation differently. And even then, I'm not sure that I would have bought into Cam Ward. You know, the mechanics are so bad, and that's what leads to the accuracy being such an issue. And a lot of people are like, well, he's going to have to work on that this summer, and he's going to have to get ready to, and he's going to have to. And I'm like, right, but he needs to work on it. That's why you don't pick somebody number 1. But that's just me. So that's the first thing. And we will get to your reaction because a lot of people want to get into the Cam Ward thing. Again, If you want to argue Cam had a good game, you can argue Cam had a good game. The throw to Gunnar Helm was a good throw. The throw that, again, to Jeffrey Simmons in the scramble drill on the kooky play, I mean, hey, that was a nice play. The throw to DK that DK didn't catch, that was a really special play. His quarterback rating was over 100. If you want to say he was bad, he had 2 dropped interceptions. He had a PFF grade of 59. He had a quarterback rating of 38, or QBR of 38. He didn't even throw for 200 yards. I mean, you can make the argument either way. And I've just decided that your opinion, if you believe in Cam, your opinion is going to be that he had a good game and everybody else is holding him back. And if you don't believe in Cam, your opinion is going to be that Cam sucks and he was overdrafted and the Titans are wasting their time and wasting everybody else's time and they should have taken the Giants trade and they'd be better off if they could draft Fernando Mendoza to draft Fernando Mendoza. But that's not going to change anything. That's just the reality of it. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to get to is actually, I think, kind of complimentary of the Tennessee Titans when it comes to their coach and their offensive coordinator, or I should say their offensive play caller, since Nick Holes is technically the coordinator and he doesn't call the plays. But Mike McCoy and Bo Hardegree have finally figured something out that I, for the life of me, cannot understand why Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker, and Mike Borgonzi for 2 years have not seemed to understand about this football team. And I want to go back to the 2024 offseason. So Vrabel's out, Callahan's in, Levis is the quarterback. He's supposed to be the future. And I kept saying, I remember going to the Super Bowl and talking to everybody at the Super Bowl about this, and I kept saying, they need to keep Derrick Henry. I interviewed Callahan the day after he got hired, and I asked him, I said, do you want Derrick Henry on this team? Do you value Derrick Henry? Do you, again, Derrick Henry this, Derrick Henry that? I would have overpaid Derrick Henry to stay. I would have threatened to use the franchise tag on Derrick Henry to get Derrick Henry to stay. Because I knew in order for Will Levis, the young quarterback at the time, to have success, I kept saying, get him a run game. Because I'm no different than you guys. I have dreams of the Titans one day having an elite passer like Tom Brady or like Josh Allen. But I also know that unless you draft Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase back to back, you're going to have to bring the young quarterback along with a running game and also a defense, but with a running game. And since the Titans let Derrick Henry walk out the door, they have kind of cared about a running game. I remember going to training camp 2 years ago and saying, this entire offense needs to be built around Tony Pollard. But Brian Callahan couldn't do that because that's just not who he is. That's just not how young coaches, offensive coaches, get hired. No young offensive coach gets hired by running the ball. They get hired by throwing it up and down the field. And so they take over a job and they want to throw it up and down the field. Remember how Matt LaFleur and Mike Vrabel kept Derrick Henry on the bench because they wanted to throw the ball up and down the field with Marcus Mariota. That is how the coaching psyche works in the NFL. Well, now I think that Mike McCoy and Bo Hardegree have actually realized that their most effective offense is to run the ball with Tony Pollard. And you want to know why it's effective? And I know Nick Bosa wasn't in there and Fred Warner, the all-world linebacker that the 49ers have, was hurt, and I get that. But you want to know why the last 2 weeks Tony Pollard has accounted for 265 yards? Because the Titans' strength is not throwing the ball. The Titans' strength, again, it really has never been throwing the ball. But with a young quarterback, you can't look at a young quarterback like Will Levis or a young quarterback like Cam Ward and say, okay, Cam, I want you to throw the ball 47 times and expect to have any success. With a young quarterback, again, who is not Joe Burrow from the jump, you want the young quarterback to throw it 16 times a game. That's what you really want. But again, when you hire the young coach who runs Peyton Manning's offense, who thinks, I can coach Will Levis into Matthew Stafford, you're going to get a guy who wants to treat Will Levis like Matthew Stafford and throw the ball 46 times a game. That's not going to work. And then when it comes to the offensive line, did you notice the Titans didn't give up a sack yesterday? And last week, they gave up 1 sack to Myles Garrett. And that was without Dan Moore for most of the game last week and all of the game this week. Their $50 million left tackle. Against Cleveland, they had Corey Levin, a journeyman backup center, who, by the way, I think might actually be better than Lloyd Cushenberry. Again, the PFF grades aren't everything. But when you pull up the Titans' PFF grades, when it comes to blocking and run blocking in particular, Zeitler, 86.9, Skoronski, 83.7, Levin, 79.8, Latham, 78.9, and then Udo, 75.4, and Cushenberry, 68. They can run block. You want to know why they can run block? Because Bill Callahan wants the big, fat offensive lineman. That's why he loved J.C. Latham, who was at least 40 pounds overweight. That's why he wanted Lloyd Cushenberry over Tyler Biadasz, because Tyler Biadasz was much smaller. That's why they got Skoronski bigger and fatter. That's why they got Dylan Radins bigger and fatter. That's what Bill Callahan wants, the big, fat offensive lineman. Well, you know what big, fat offensive linemen can do? They can run block. Because when you run block, you are pushing forward. What they're not as good at is pass blocking. That is 3rd and 16. Here comes Myles Garrett off the edge. And again, the young coach wants to throw the ball up and down the field. 5 guys go into the pattern. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And I do not understand how Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi did not at any point sit there with Levis or with Ward and said, you know what? If we're going to develop this young kid, we got to run the shit out of the ball. I am stunned by it. All of a sudden, the Titans have decided we're going to run the ball. And I wonder how much of this is Tony Pollard and the way he played at Cleveland, busting out that 65-yarder that has told the coaches, no, we're going to run the ball. The same way Derrick Henry told the Titans coaches, we're going to run the ball. The days of Deion Lewis are over. I'm going to go run for 99 yards on one play. I'm going to run for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns in a game. And the days of running the ball are of sitting me on the bench are over. I don't know. But the Titans have decided we're going to run the ball. And that's what you have to do for a young quarterback. You have to run the ball, you have to be tough, and you have to play defense. That's what you have to do to be successful. The old man used to tell me, if you want to be good fast, the easiest way to get good in the NFL is to run the ball and to play defense. And that's why, again, when Mike Mularkey took the job, an older veteran coach, when he took the job, a guy that had J.P. Lossman in Buffalo and it had Blaine Gabbert in Jacksonville, he didn't sit there and say, okay, we're going to throw the ball up and down the field with Mariota. No. He said, we are going to get DeMarco Murray and we are going to run the ball. We're going to get DeMarco Murray. We're going to get Derrick Henry. We're going to get Ben Jones. We're going to get Jack Conklin, and we're going to run the ball. And I remember Titan fans getting upset about it. I remember Titan fans saying, oh my God, they're leaving the Maserati in the garage, which sounds so foolish about Mariota today, but that is how a lot of you people felt at the time. That's why a lot of you people were glad to get rid of Mike Mularkey and Terry Rubisky because you thought that was 1930s football. You said the same shit about Vrabel. Vrabel brings in the coordinator from the Rams. We're going to throw the ball up and down the field. Then all of a sudden they realized, no, we're better off handing the ball to Derrick Henry. And because they won doing it, it was like, yeah, let the big dog eat. Then by the end of the Vrabel run, it was, oh, Vrabel, that 1930s offense with the leather helmets. And thank God we brought in Brian Callahan. He's a modern coordinator. The Titans this year in rushing attempts, 31st in the NFL. Last year, the Titans were 16th in rushing attempts, which is actually very surprising. The reality, you need to run the ball. And I think Mike McCoy and Bo Hardegree, I think that they figured that out. Again, if I were the Titans and I became general manager in 3 weeks when the season ends, and I mean like a real general manager, not like I have to answer to Brinker and Amy and all that bullshit, but a real general manager. If I became the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, I would say we're going to run the football and we're going to play defense. I'm going to try to convince Kevin Zeitler to stay so I don't have to go looking for a right guard. I'm going to go get a better tight end. I'm going to get a better center because Cushenberry stinks. And I'm going to go get a better running back. And I'm going to tell Cam, hey, man, we want you to throw the ball 16 times a game. Now, if you have to throw it 27 because we're losing, we get it. But we want you to throw it 16 times a game. And then a lot of people will get really upset because what they'll do is they'll say, oh, no, you're leaving Cam Ward in the garage and you need to. That's okay. I'd rather win 9-7 than lose every game the way they lose every game now. And the same way that they lost every game last year. So that's the second thing. Kudos to Mike McCoy and Bo Hardegree for finally figuring it out. They need to run the ball. Run the ball to set up the pass. It's very basic football. Now, I do want to get to this before we get to your reaction on the Cam front, just because this is, I just want to take you through my thought process and my head and everything that I was thinking yesterday during the early windows when I watched the great Mike Vrabel and the shocking first half against the Buffalo Bills and the disastrous second half, which cost them, in which they lost to the Bills 35-31. So we all know the story, the tale of two halves. We all know Vrabel and company dominated in the first half. And in the second half, Josh Allen took over, and I think there was a little questionable officiating in that game against Vrabel in New England. And so make of that what you will. But Josh Allen won the game in the second half. But during the first half, I'm watching the game, and my son is napping, and I'm making him lunch so that when he wakes up from his nap, he'll have lunch. But I'm watching Drake May and Vrabel and Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson, and they are just putting it on the Bills. Buffalo could not stop the Patriots running the ball. Buffalo could not stop Drake May. I mean, that first drive, they run, short pass, run, big pass to Kayshon Boutte, score a touchdown. Not only could they not stop New England from running the ball, and they couldn't stop Drake May, they couldn't stop Drake May from running the ball himself. And as I'm watching the first half yesterday, I'm sitting there and thinking, boys, Mike Vrabel is about to go to the Super Bowl. That's how I felt. Sitting there in the middle of the first half where, once again, Buffalo was just getting their brains kicked in by New England. Because this to me, and I said this in six-pack picks when I picked Buffalo, and I said, this is the prove-it game for me with New England. New England had won 10 in a row, but they had been all against really crappy teams with the exception of Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. And I wondered to myself, is it because they're playing nothing but crappy teams like the Saints, like the Falcons, like the Titans? Or is it because the great Mike Vrabel is really that great? And I was weighing that. And so it's one thing for them to knock off Carolina. It is another thing to knock off the Buffalo Bills when you are essentially going to win the division by doing it. And once again, at halftime, New England was crushing Buffalo. It was 24-7 at the half. I mean, they were just dominating. And so I'm watching that first half, and I'm thinking, oh my God, Mike Vrabel is going to the Super Bowl. And I started to think in my stomach, oh God, how's that going to feel? Because at the same time, Kansas City was in a dogfight with the Chargers, and Kansas City had to win in order to have a shot at the playoffs. I knew Kansas City was dead. Now, I didn't think Mahomes was going to get hurt, but obviously. I know Kansas City, even before Mahomes got hurt, I knew they weren't going to the Super Bowl this year. So Kansas City's not going to the Super Bowl. Baltimore's probably not going to the Super Bowl. Assuming they were about to dog walk Buffalo and beat them for the second time this season, it felt like they're not going to the Super Bowl. And so at halftime, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's either Bo Nix that's going to keep Mike Vrabel from the Super Bowl, or else we as Titan fans are going to have to live with the fact that they let go of the great Mike Vrabel, and in his first year, he's going to take the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Because it's not going to be Jacksonville, and it's not going to be Pittsburgh. It's not going to be one of those so-so AFC teams that stops New England and Foxborough. It's just not going to happen. So again, 24/7 at halftime, and I was thinking about Amy Adams-Strunk and how she must have felt. Vrabel's won 10 in a row, and he's up 100-0. Hell, I was thinking about how I felt with Mike Vrabel and New England up 100-0. Because I wanted Mike Vrabel fired too. And so I started to think, maybe this organization is just so dysfunctional that Mike Vrabel really was Bill Parcells 2.0, and that it absolutely was the Tennessee Titans who got in the way, who kept Mike Vrabel from being as great as Mike Vrabel could be. Again, the way the national media spun it, and I am convinced this is what the national media believes. But the way the national media operated was Mike Vrabel is an incredible coach who carried the Tennessee Titans and invented all of the success that they have ever had. John Robinson got no credit for it. Derrick Henry, who was benched by Matt LaFleur and Mike Vrabel, got no credit for it. Mike Mularkey, who in 2 seasons was 9-7, 9-7, went to the playoffs, beat Kansas City on the road in a playoff game, he got no credit for it. It was just Vrabel. And everything good that happened to the Titans, like being the number 1 seed in 2021 with all of the players that were injured, that goes to Vrabel. Going to the AFC title game in 2019, beating the Patriots, beating the Ravens, that all goes to Vrabel. Now, the bad things that happened to the Titans over that period of time, Ryan Tannehill falling apart under Todd Downing, not Vrabel's fault. The A.J. Brown trade, not Vrabel's fault. Losing 7 in a row in 2022, not Vrabel's fault. 6-11 in 2023, not Vrabel's fault. I'm not saying it is or isn't Vrabel's fault. I'm just saying that is the perception of what the national media believed. And when Mike Vrabel's up 100-0 at halftime, and he's won 10 in a row, and Drake May looks like the second coming of Aaron Rodgers, it's hard for me to believe that maybe Mike Vrabel isn't the problem or wasn't part of the problem. And I was really starting to feel it myself as somebody who was really, really hard on Vrabel at the end with his coaching hires and Andre Dillard. And yet, then the second half happened. So on one hand, at halftime, I am not only having the sickness of what could have been like, oh my God, did they just fire the next Bill Parcells? But I'm also thinking about, oh my God, Did I advocate to get this guy fired and he really is Bill Parcells 2.0 and he really is the next Don Shula and the Titans are just such a bad organization that nobody, no matter how good they are, nobody can carry them out of the depths of shit with which they reside because Amy Adams Strunk and her cronies are so fucking stupid that there's nothing you can do. And then the second half happened. And in the second half, Mike Vrabel and his defense got outscored 28-7. Now, some of that is because Josh Allen is the league MVP. Josh Allen is Josh Allen. And the great players are the ones who make deficits like that go away. But some of that also has to be on the great Mike Vrabel and the great Mike Vrabel's defense for not stepping up. Because they scored 31 points yesterday on the Buffalo Bills. And they are rolling right now because of Drake May. And what's the key to Drake May's success? I cannot believe that the key to Drake May's success is Vrabel. I think it's Josh McDaniels. And I think Josh McDaniels is there because of Robert Kraft. I think Robert Kraft was insistent on Mike Vrabel hiring Josh McDaniels because I don't know exactly how, but I think Kraft did some research on what didn't go well here in Tennessee. And my guess is he did some research and found out if you let Vrabel hire Todd Downing or Tim Kelly to be the offensive coordinator, you're going to be in deep trouble. So then Robert Kraft said, okay, Mike, I'm going to hire you to be the coach, but I want Josh McDaniels, who I've already signed to a contract, who already is indebted to me. I want Josh McDaniels to run the offense. And Vrabel, who usually can be really hard-headed about a lot of things, is probably like, well, I'm not going to let this ruin my opportunity to get the Patriot job. And so, fine. And he's got Todd Downing as the receivers coach watching over him. So he knows if I will get mad at Josh, I can fire Josh and put Todd Downing in there. But the reason they're rolling is because Drake May is a great talent. Vrabel didn't draft Drake May. And because Josh McDaniels is coaching that great talent. But at the same time, it's hard for me to just bang on Mike Vrabel right now. And trust me, I can give you an entire dissertation on why Mike Vrabel was part of the Mike Vrabel problem in Tennessee. I could do it. And I believe it. Now, I don't believe Vrabel is the problem with the Tennessee Titans. I mean, I begged them when they got rid of Vrabel. I'm like, get rid of Ran Carthon too. And they said, no. Vrabel was holding Ran Carthon back. I kid you not. There were people who actually told me in that building, you will see, now that Vrabel's gone, now that Vrabel's cronies, Stretch and Ryan Cowden, and now that those guys are gone, you will see how smart Ran Carthon is. Yeah, we saw that. So when it comes to Vrabel, I know what his faults are. But at the same time, it was hard watching that first half of football and not thinking, maybe Vrabel really is that good of a coach. And that this Titan organization is just so sad and so dysfunctional and so in their own way, they'll never be good. And Vrabel is living proof of it. I did start to feel that way. Again, I've been on Boston radio criticizing Mike Vrabel when they hired him, and everybody in New England said, oh, the great Mike Vrabel has returned. Oh, those hillbillies in Tennessee, they didn't know what they were doing. And I said, guys, Vrabel's a good coach. He's not that good of a coach. Let's talk Todd Downing. Let's talk Tim Kelly. Let's talk Jason Hodling. Let's talk about all the screw-ups, Shane Bowen, and all the screw-ups the great Mike Vrabel had when he was the coach of the Titans. And nobody wanted to hear that. Everybody wanted to say Vrabel was the greatest. Well, then Vrabel starts off 11-2 and wins 10 in a row. And it is really hard for me to argue that. But at least I can say, well, they hadn't played anybody. They beat Buffalo by 3 points. That was their first, hey, they may have arrived moment. And they beat Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay looks terrible, so I'm not, whatever. And everybody else they played stunk. Well, now you get Buffalo. And Buffalo knows you're legit. And Buffalo knows they have to win the game in order to have a shot at the AFC East. And you're up 24-7 at halftime. Had that game gone the way it was going at the end of the first half, had New England won that game 41-17, true blowout fashion, never close, just putting it on them, I don't think you could argue that the Titans really did hold Mike Vrabel back. But that's a hypothetical. That's a big if. And that if didn't happen because Mike Vrabel's defense got outscored 28-7 in the second half. But at the same time, I would be lying to you if I was not having second thoughts about my assessment of Vrabel and why it didn't work out here. I believe it didn't work out with Mike Vrabel because Amy Adams Strunk gave Vrabel too much power and gave Vrabel too much leeway and didn't keep him in check and didn't put him in his place until it was too late. And I think it didn't work out because Amy Adams Strunk hired a complete moron in Rand Carthon to work with Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel, no matter what you tell him or what he promises you he'll do, he can't work with a moron. He cannot work with somebody who he views as intellectually beneath him, and Rand Carthon absolutely foot that bill. So, again, that's not all Vrabel's fault, but Vrabel was stubborn. Vrabel was arrogant. Vrabel was over the top in his defensiveness. For somebody that preached about lack of entitlement, Vrabel was entitled. He thought he should get the benefit of the doubt on everything. And so I figured that wouldn't play well in a bigger market with a young quarterback they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to win the division. And if they hadn't completely fallen apart in the second half, I probably would be saying, oh my God, I was wrong about Vrabel. But they didn't. So that's where I am on that Vrabel front, in which I did want to address. I don't know about you guys, because I think what happens is when the result is, well, Mike Vrabel lost. Buffalo 35, New England 31. New England got outscored 28-7 in the second half. Vrabel showed with his defense at the end, he really wasn't that good. They finally played Buffalo, and they couldn't seal the deal, and it'd be real easy to shut your mouth until after the game. But at halftime, when it was 24-7 New England, I really was thinking about, oh my God, maybe Mike Vrabel is that once-in-a-lifetime coach, and Amy Adams Strunk is just such a bad owner that they took the best coach and they made him 6-11 because they were too cheap, because they were too stupid, because they were too poorly run. I was feeling that way at halftime. And I did think, again, at halftime, Mike Vrabel's going to the Super Bowl. Because if you knock Buffalo out, you're not worried about them in the playoffs. Kansas City's not making the playoffs. Baltimore is not that much of a threat this year. It's not going to be Jacksonville or Pittsburgh that beats New England and Foxborough. So it's either the Texans defense or it's Bo Nix that is keeping Mike Vrabel out of the Super Bowl. And if that's the case, I probably would take Mike Vrabel. But they didn't win. So that's the Vrabel front. We will get to the Diego Pavia stuff here in just a second, but I did promise your reaction. And boy, we have a lot of reaction to get to here on a Titan Monday. And of course, a lot of it, I think, is about Cam Ward. So Kyle says, what was that? You said Mahomes like on the throw to Chim DK that Chim DK dropped yesterday. Kyle says, even you compare him to Mahomes. Again, a Mahomes-like play. And he is Mahomes, or he will be Mahomes are two totally different things. Patrick Mahomes throws an accurate pass from the pocket. Cam Ward does not. Big difference there. And Mahomes, he'll run around but he makes those superstar plays and sometimes uses his legs to make those superstar plays, and Cam does not. But the backyard football, the improvising, the staying cool under pressure, the throwing across the field off of his back foot and putting it right in a guy's hands, Cam can do that. You know I love Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can't do that. He doesn't play like Mahomes. Cam can do that. The problem is Cam does that about once every 3 weeks. And on the other end, Cam misses wide open receivers about 3 times every week. That's got to be a difference. The distinguished gentleman said, how did Sam Fool's Gold Darnold do yesterday? Cam had a better game than Sam. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but let me ask, by what metric did Cam Ward have a better game than Sam Darnold did? Because I've gotten a lot of people who have sent me messages saying, Cam Ward played better than Sam Darnold, Jared. What do you think now? Well, did he? Again, Cam threw for 170. Sam threw for 270. Now, Cam had 2 touchdowns, and Sam didn't throw for a touchdown. And Cam had a higher quarterback rating. But as far as QBR, the ESPN statistic, which once again, QBR was designed by ESPN to try to give an accurate representation as to how the quarterback played independent of the situation surrounding the quarterback. Well, according to that, Sam Darnold had a 44 QBR. Cam Ward had a 38 QBR. According to Pro Football Focus, when it came to passing, Cam had a 59.1 grade and a 56 passing grade. Again, 59.1. Sam Darnold, 64.4, and a passing grade of 73.5. So Sam had a higher passing grade, a higher PFF grade, a higher QBR, threw for 100 more yards, won the game, and you still think Cam played a better game? I mean, I would understand if you think that Cam Ward is going to eventually be better than Sam Darnold. I don't think that, but a lot of people think that, and that's fine. But to act like Cam is better than Sam right now, or to act like Cam played better than Sam yesterday, is ridiculous. Sam led a 4th quarter comeback game-winning drive. Cam didn't. Sam did it, I think, with no timeouts left. Give me a break. One person says, the Niners didn't punt all game, but yeah, it's all Cam's fault. I never said that. In fact, yesterday on Post Game Live, I said, 2 things can be true. Cam can stink, and right now Cam is stinking. And the team can suck. And that's not Cam's fault. But again, this goes back to the decision to pick Cam. Because the team was so bad that I felt like they needed an influx of talent that they would have received by trading the pick and using the Giants picks and getting the Giants picks for this upcoming draft. And signing a quarterback in Sam Darnold, who is better than Cam right now, and I think right now is better than Cam will ever be, but is absolutely better than him right now, and then building your team around those picks and around Darnold and around Jeffrey Simmons and around the receiver that you drafted and so on and so forth. But no, had to have Cam. So they put Cam into this really bad situation, which they could have made better if they had traded the pick of Cam. But now it's not Cam's fault. And I'm like, well, then they shouldn't have drafted him. And that's the problem that I've had the entire time. Same person said, Shedeur looked great yesterday. Oh, wait. Again, when did Shedeur Sanders become my guy? I never liked Shedeur Sanders. I just had the balls to point out, so many of you are afraid to do it because you're afraid to hurt your feelings that Cam might not be that good, that Shedeur Sanders absolutely outplayed Cam last week. And that hasn't changed just because Shedeur got absolutely railroaded by the Chicago Bears. Now, I don't watch that game, so I can't tell you what happened or what didn't happen. But the stat said he did not play very well. Jude says, a season with a shit coaching staff, a shit offensive line, who blocks part-time and receivers who can't catch or get open. Yeah, great surroundings for him to play at his best. Jude, I think you are going to take home the honors today.
The Cam Ward excuse of the day.
Congratulations to Jude. Again, just making every excuse in the book. It's not Cam's fault. I agree it's not Cam's fault. The problem is that in order to build a better team, they needed to trade that pick. That's the issue. The issue that I have. Too funny. Kyle says, most penalized team in the league 2 years in a row. That isn't Amy's fault. No, but the moron coach that they hired, that is Amy's fault. By the way, I had somebody who is a senior NFL person. I don't want to say what the exact job title is because it might give it away. But I had somebody who is a senior person at ESPN, a senior NFL person at ESPN, that said something to me about Callahan. And when I asked for a follow-up or a clarification, because it kind of had the vibe to me like this person had talked to Callahan. And it kind of had the vibe of that. But I asked them to explain more, and they wouldn't do it. And I found it to be very interesting. I don't totally believe it because I think Callahan was a dope. Not that I don't think Amy's stupid, or not that I don't think that the Rand was stupid and Brinker's full of it. And none of that. I absolutely think all those things. But it was fascinating. We'll probably do that tomorrow on the program. I love how one person, George, says, stop making excuses for Cam. Witty then goes, Cam excuse of the day equals nuance and difference of opinion. No, that's the Cam Ward excuse of the day. And I will say this about Witty. Witty may take home the Cam Ward excuse of the season for whatever that's worth. One person says, Mike Borgonzi and Callahan thought that, and Brinker drafted Cam Ward because they thought he would uplift this roster. They were wrong. I hope Borgonzi talks at the end of the season. I'm worried he won't. I don't think he has to, but I am worried that he won't talk. I think he needs to after the end of the year because they're going to be going on a coaching search. And I actually think Brinker should do the talking as well. I would love to know, do you guys think that, talking about Brinker and Borgonzi, did you guys think you were going to be that bad this year? Like, were you expecting, I know you knew that it was going to be tough and you were going to have a tough year ahead. Did you know that you were going to be worse than you were the year before? Did you know that you were going to be so bad that we look at a game where you lost by 13 points and you never were really in it, and we say, man, you know, that wasn't that bad? I do wonder that. TDG in his anti-Sam Darnold take says, he didn't throw a touchdown, meaning he didn't put up any points. Stop it, Jared. Jeez. I wonder how then Seattle got the ball down there with 50 seconds to go in the game to lead to the game-winning field goal. How did they do that? I guess I'm not smart enough to figure that out. How did they get down there? Witty says, funny how you don't mention his passer rating this week when you were more than fine bringing it up every other week. It's on the bottom of the screen, Witty. 101.2. It's a career high. It's on the bottom of the screen. You won't talk about his passer rating. I made the graphic. It's on the bottom of the screen, moron. Oh, my God. So, again, some of you people just take this Cam Ward shit so seriously and so personally. You're like, oh, my God, Cam, you have to think that Cam's going to be good because even though you begged them not to take Cam, they took him anyway. So now you have to pretend he's good even though he's not. No, I never thought Cam was that good. I thought Cam was being set up to fail. I think he has failed because he was set up to fail and because he has serious shortcomings in his game. And I'm worried that we're going to be wasting a year of our lives this year, a year of our lives next year, and maybe half of the next year until Amy comes to her senses, cleans house, and finally gets rid of Brinker. Jude says, at the end of the day, Cam is here. The team around him sucks. He'll be here for 1 to 2 more years at least. It's too early to call him a flat bust. Fine, then don't. But I'm just telling you what I see every week. I told you that before they drafted him, and you people were like, no. Cam Ward, he's a winner. He was a 0-star recruit. By the way, has anybody watched that show on Cam Ward? I've seen the commercials. Zero interest in watching that shit. Zero. All right. Let's get to Diego Pavia here for a second. Congratulations to Fernando Mendoza, who won the Heisman Trophy at Indiana. I kept telling you guys all last week, I thought Fernando Mendoza was going to win it. I thought that by winning the Big Ten championship game, that put Mendoza over the top. And not only that, I felt like the same way the College Football Playoff Committee had turned off their brains to Vanderbilt each and every week, that the national media was going to do something similar and that they were going to pick Mendoza. Now, the Athletic straw poll made me think that this was going to be a close Heisman Trophy race. It was not. Mendoza won in a landslide. Diego Pavia finished second. So let's start there. I thought Diego Pavia deserved the Heisman Trophy. And I know Fernando Mendoza had a great season. And I thought Fernando Mendoza had a bunch of moments like the comeback against Penn State, the win at Oregon, and of course beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. If I had to go to war with one of these quarterbacks, I'd rather have Mendoza because I think he's a more talented player. And he's going to go number 1 in the draft. Pavia may not get drafted. But I thought Diego Pavia had the better season. And I thought the context with which Diego Pavia did what he did in the SEC, I thought it deserved the Heisman Trophy. That said, Pavia made himself look like a total douchebag after losing the Heisman Trophy on Saturday night. And I know Pavia has come out and he's apologized for it. I really don't have a problem with Pavia saying F the voters on Instagram after he lost. Not because I thought that Pavia should have won, which I did think Pavia should have won. I don't have a problem with it because that's who Diego Pavia is. Diego Pavia is Happy Gilmore at quarterback. He's embraced it. The shocking thing is that Vanderbilt has embraced Diego Pavia as Happy Gilmore at quarterback. So when Happy Gilmore loses and does a Happy Gilmore-like thing, should that really surprise anybody? Again, the guy he looks up to is Johnny Manziel. That said, if I was Diego Pavia's advisor and he was hoping to get drafted into the NFL, I'd say maybe partnering with the hotties and throwing up middle fingers and saying F the media after you didn't win the Heisman like a sore loser. Maybe that's not the right approach. But the truth is Diego Pavia never does things like anybody else. That's why Diego Pavia is different. And I've said this time and time again. Some dudes talking shit backs them into a corner where they talked all that shit, they can't back it up, and everybody turns on them. Diego Pavia has talked all that shit for 2 years, and he's backed it up on the field every single time. So I don't like what Pavia did, but I'm not surprised by what Pavia did. The third thing is the reaction to the reaction on Diego Pavia, specifically with Tennessee fans, is so embarrassing. By the way, one guy says, quite the role model. Diego Pavia, he has no desire to be your role model. Zero desire. That's not who he is. But Tennessee fans, we have to talk about this. So I did. Look, I say things I believe. I don't ever say things I don't believe. I'm not one of those guys. I know some of you think that, oh, Jared Stillman just says this stuff for clicks. And I will say this. I do believe this, But I was trolling Tennessee fans on Saturday night when I sent out the tweet that said, Vanderbilt fans now know what Tennessee fans felt when Peyton Manning lost the Heisman to Charles Woodson. I knew what reaction that was going to draw. And I kind of did that on purpose. I knew what reaction it was going to draw. Tennessee fans were going to be offended. Why? Because Peyton Manning is a saint to those people. And Diego Pavia is little Leave It to Beaver who stirs up the pot along with Eddie Haskell and just is a thorn in their ass. And they're embarrassed by the fact that Leave It to Beaver walked into Neyland Stadium and beat them by 21 points. But the Tennessee fans are so hypocritical and so out of touch with reality that it makes it fun to poke the bear. Again, do I think that the gap between Fernando Mendoza and Diego Pavia was as big as, again, what I assume the gap was? I was 7 years old at the time. But the gap between Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning? Probably not. But in reality, Tennessee fans thought that Peyton Manning deserved to be the Heisman Trophy winner, and he didn't win. Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt fans thought he deserved to be the Heisman Trophy winner, and he didn't win. He finished second. The great Diego Pavia, the greatest player in Vanderbilt football history, just like Peyton Manning is the greatest player in Tennessee football history. Well, Pavia didn't even make it to the playoff. Okay. And Peyton Manning couldn't beat Florida. Is what it is. And Tennessee fans got so mad by that tweet that they just started saying a bunch of stupid stuff. One guy, we wouldn't take Pavia if he paid us. Another guy, I'd rather go 0-12 for a couple of years than have Pavia and crew represent my university. Another guy, they put the P in poverty talking about Vanderbilt. First of all, Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt's success is a product of the new college football. The new college football, NIL, transfer portal, paying the players, what is essentially player empowerment. And Tennessee wanted to be the poster child for that when it first happened. Because I remember when Nico Iamaleava signed that big contract to Tennessee, he was still in high school. And it was like, we are taking advantage of the new rules. Nobody is going to outspend the University of Tennessee. We are going to be the New York Yankees of the new era of college football. And you will see. And they picked the wrong guy because Nico wasn't very good. And not only was Nico not very good, Nico was a total head case with zero integrity. They picked the wrong guy. Nico did not elevate the Tennessee volunteer program. Vanderbilt picked the right guy. They got the guy who beat Alabama. They got the guy who finished second in the Heisman Trophy race. Hendon Hooker didn't even get invited to New York. They got the guy that Tennessee wishes they had had. You'd rather go 0-12 for a couple of years than have Pavia represent Tennessee? Give me a break. Go look at your baseball team. You people loved those guys. There's no difference. It's actually funny because the roles are reversed. Diego Pavia is a Tennessee baseball player playing Vanderbilt football. A couple of years ago, I said what I loved about the Vanderbilt-Tennessee rivalry is that Vanderbilt has this hoity-toity, we're better than you, especially Vandy baseball, this pretentious feeling to themselves that we're so much better than the white trash redneck hillbillies of the Tennessee baseball program. And the Tennessee baseball program has the approach, at least mentally, of fuck you. And I love the contrasting styles and personalities. That's Diego Pavia. And when all these Tennessee fans talk down to Vanderbilt, what they're really doing is they're showing their insecurity that in this new era of college football, that Vanderbilt is on Tennessee's level. And they say things like, oh, yeah, we wouldn't take Pavia. Right. So you're okay with getting beat by 21 points at home to Vandy? You're okay with the fact that Vandy right now is better than you? And there are Tennessee fans that are like, when Pavia leaves, they'll go back to being the same old Vandy. And maybe, I don't think so, because I think NIL has changed the game and Vanderbilt's willing to spend. That's just me. But these Vanderbilt fans are like, hey, we're on your level now, Tennessee. And Tennessee fans are like, no, you're not. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't know what's going to happen next year with Pavia gone. But I'm not ready to say Tennessee's going to beat Vanderbilt. And I'm not ready to say Vanderbilt's going to stay up in the top 15 the way they were this year. I just don't know. But the game has changed. And Tennessee fans don't want to admit it. And when they say Vanderbilt, they put the V in poverty, I think to myself, they beat you by 21 points in football. They have one of the best basketball teams in the country. They beat you in baseball. Vanderbilt right now is kicking your ass. And you Tennessee fans just can't admit it. And when you say things like, oh, we wouldn't take Pavia if he paid us, people that were tweeting me over the weekend saying Joey Aguilar's better than Pavia, guys, it's one thing to like your team. It's one thing to hate your rival. It's another thing to say the stupidest shit you could possibly think of. And Vanderbilt just got the top recruit in the country to flip from Georgia to play for Vandy. If you think this is the way it used to be, you do not understand sports. So, I don't think Pavia got robbed. I thought he should have won and he didn't. I wasn't surprised by it. I didn't like Pavia's reaction to it, but I wasn't surprised by it. That's who Pavia's been for 2 years. I didn't like all of the sanctimonious crying about Pavia's reaction. Like, how dare he not be mad that he didn't win? And I thought that the Tennessee response to it was both insecure and hypocritical. So I guess at that point, nobody did well when it came to the Pavia Heisman situation. That's it for us. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, on YouTube at Stillman & Company. Stillman & Company, we will see you all tomorrow live at 2 o'clock.